Honey is better than rice, and here's why. As an engineering student for a very long time, I've been struggling with brain fog. I've been trying to eat healthy, I've been trying to eat things like rice and wheat and a balanced diet, but it did nothing. It only made my brain fog worse. I realized that mainstream nutrition advice is bullshit and switched over to a more ancestral diet. I started eating more meat, I started eating less carbs and a different kind of carbs. And it drastically improved my productivity. I've been able to focus for much longer. I've finally been able to actually contribute to group projects because I would always crash and fall asleep and not be able to work and get bad grades from that, which made me really stressed. But weirdly enough, once I switched away from rice and other grains towards honey and fruit, I actually felt much better and weirdly enough got much less spiking sugar from it. So yeah, let's dive right into this. You see, rice is a complex carbohydrate, which means it's made out of starch, while honey is made out of sugar. So you may think that, yeah, well, sugar is gonna spike you more. Well, this is not the case. Because rice, and especially white rice, which has been industrially processed to remove the bran and remove most of the fiber out of it, is mostly just starch. And this starch is quickly broken down into glucose. So the profile of this carbohydrate is just mostly glucose. It's 80% glucose. While when you think about honey, honey is a mix of glucose and fructose. And I'm not gonna dive deep into the biochemistry of this, but basically fructose cannot get right into your blood and be used as sugar. It needs to get through your liver first. So surprisingly enough, when you eat honey, it actually has a much smaller glycemic index. It doesn't spike your sugar nearly as much as white rice. So when you eat honey rather than rice, most of its sugar has to be processed in your liver first because it's fructose. It doesn't go right away into your blood and cause this huge spike, which is gonna lead to the crash. So that is my first point. Now the most interesting part about these two is actually this. I want to ask you a question. How much white rice can you eat and how much honey can you eat? People like to say, honey is sugar, but rice is good, it's filling, it's satiating. Well, you eat 100 grams of rice in one go every time you eat rice. Usually it's that amount. 100 grams is like one portion for me. But how much honey can you really eat in one go? Like a teaspoon, maybe a tablespoon. Well, 100 grams of honey has almost the same amount of carbohydrates and calories as 100 grams of white rice. But here's the thing, 100 grams of honey is like this much. You're not gonna be able to eat this, like never you're gonna eat this much honey in one go. While white rice, you can easily eat more than 100 grams of white rice in one go. 100 grams of uncooked white rice is roughly 300 grams of rice. Well, you're gonna eat a bunch of it. You're not gonna be able to stop. I used to be addicted to white rice. Like, I would be addicted to so many complex, healthy carbohydrates. I just, a little more. I wanna eat more this time. And I would never be able to stop. While when I eat honey, I eat like maybe a teaspoon of it in one go because it's so sweet. Because of the fructose, which is actually much more sweeter than glucose, you end up eating much less of it than if you ate just plain white rice. So it's just a no-brainer to me. The amount of honey you're gonna consume until you're like, yeah, I'm good, it's just negligible. It's if you just sit down like I am right now with a teaspoon and a jar of honey, how much honey you're really gonna be able to eat? Like, you're gonna look how I'm eating honey. Like, I'm not even like taking the whole teaspoon, I'm just dipping it gently and that's it. This is enough to already overwhelm my entire mouth with all the sugar. But when you eat white rice, you don't notice how much you're consuming because it's starch. It doesn't feel sweet. So interestingly, because honey is more sweet, it signals to your mouth right away that you've got a lot of sugar. While rice does not do this, there is very little sugar in rice, so you don't really taste the sweetness when you eat it, and it's so much easier to overeat. I used to be so bloated just because I ate a bunch of carbohydrates and couldn't stop. I would cook some rice and think it was healthy, but then I would eat such amounts of it, like it was atrocious. 150 grams of dry rice, which is like 450 grams of cooked rice, half a kg, like a pound of cooked rice. That's a lot. You don't need these many carbohydrates. If you're doing mental work, if you're not plowing a field or something, you need much less of it. So this is why I switched over to honey and fruit. Now, some twat is always gonna lift his hand and say something like, yeah, well, but sugar from honey is gonna wreck your gut microbiome and cause diabetes. No, this is false. Well, rice may damage your gut microbiome a lot, and maybe like if you eat if you eat like 1 kg of honey in one go, yeah, it's gonna wreck your gut microbiome. You're never gonna be able to do this though. The amount of honey you can eat is far less than could be dangerous, and in fact, honey is a really beneficial thing for gut microbiome. It is completely different from the kind of added sugar you can buy in store. When you eat added sugar, it's gonna feed the wrong gut bacteria, but honey, especially natural honey which hasn't been diluted with high fructose corn syrup or some other bullshit, which comes from bees who actually find plants and who weren't sprayed with pesticides, this honey is actually gonna improve your gut microbiome because of the pollen, because of the impurities, because of other compounds which are found in it. There are so many, there are thousands of different chemical compounds in honey. It's not the same thing as just plain sugar. So if you eat honey, it's actually gonna make your gut microbiome better. And by the way, if you're afraid that it's gonna wreck your teeth, this is not the case. Actually, honey is protective. Like most people think when you eat something sweet, it's gonna damage your teeth. And that may be the case with sugar, but when you eat honey, it's actually protective because it has antiseptic properties. Think of it, I just ate it with a spoon and I obviously added my saliva into the jar, but it's never really gonna get contaminated because it's antiseptic. There's some hydrogen peroxide in there and other compounds which prevent bacteria from growing in there. I could literally like bury it underground and come back in 50 years and it would still be edible. It would be crystallized, but it would be still edible. So, honey is a superfood. I really believe that. You cannot eat too much of it. You cannot get addicted to honey like you get addicted to fucking grains. And it is just so much better for you to eat honey rather than eat some bullshit stuff from your supermarket. Now, one thing is really important. You need to find the right honey. And the right honey is the real honey, because nowadays you can find a bunch of these weird plastic containers like plastic bears. Oh, bears like honey, healthy honey. Well, it's probably coming from China where it's been diluted with high fructose corn syrup and other stuff. You may not know this, but a lot of labs and sketchy, fraudulent people have actually learned to mimic real honey to a pretty damn good level by adding a right mixture of high fructose corn syrup and glucose and fructose and other stuff to make it look like real honey, but it's not real honey. Real honey is quite expensive, but the good thing is that you don't eat a lot of it because you don't get addicted to it. So here are my tips in choosing the right honey. Well, first of all, buy it from a reliable source. Buy it from a single place preferably. Buy it from your country. Don't buy something which is imported from Uruguay or Chile. Sometimes you find things like this, plastic containers, which says basically pure honey, but then it says origin, and there's a list of like Ukraine, Uruguay, Chile, and Thailand. Like 4 countries in different places of the world and all mixed together. The thing is, the traceability is gone at this point. Like even if the manufacturer isn't actively trying to modify the honey and add sugar into it, the traceability is gone. You no longer know where it comes from. So even they cannot be sure that all the sources of all the honey is pure honey and not some mixture of glucose and fructose. So the most reliable way of buying real honey is buying it from farmers, buying it from someone you know. So this honey, for example, I have a friend in our engineering school whose friend of family is a beekeeper and he's got his own bees and so he's making his own honey, and you see like the sticker is amateurish, it doesn't look like super professional, the jar is simple. Don't buy honey in like very sophisticated like bear, like these bear plastic containers. Well, don't buy any honey from plastic ever, because I don't think it's a good idea. If honey is packaged in plastic, you can almost certainly be sure that it's either not real honey or a really low quality honey, which was basically bees who were fed high fructose corn syrup, because it happens. People sometimes feed them sugar rather than actually letting them pollinate plants around them. So the best is obviously organic honey, which doesn't have any pesticides in a 5-mile range around the hives, but it's pretty hard to find. If you can find just good quality honey from a local farmer, it's already like 90% of the work. So, oh, by the way, look how, another way of seeing that it's good quality is look how much stretchy it is. Look how long is it's almost like a filament. So this is real honey. Like high fructose corn syrup doesn't do this. And if you take a look too, you may or may not see that there's pollen and there's impurities in there. Sometimes you could even find parts of bees, but usually it's filtered well enough to not have any of that. But I can see a bunch of pollen in my honey, and actually pollen and other impurities are beneficial, so they add the benefits to your honey. This one has a very rich taste too. You need to taste the fruit, you need to taste like almost the flowers in there, otherwise it's kind of sketchy to me. The honey has to have a unique taste. So yep, enough tasting honey. I'm gonna close the jar now. I really hope this was helpful, and I really hope that you understand the idea behind this. Actually, when I started eating honey, I felt much smaller sugar spikes. Well, probably because of all the reasons that I just listed, but it is just so much better for you to eat honey rather than eating stupid grains. Like rice is full of arsenic. It's not even trace amounts. It's actually like some of rice batches have dangerous amounts which have not been even approved by FDA, even though I don't listen to FDA very often. But basically there is no reason to eat rice. I think rice is kind of garbage, especially processed rice. It's addictive, full of heavy metals. You don't want it, so just stop. Stop eating honey. Honey is the best. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.